Hello everyone. So, I went and saw Creed 2 the moment that I could because I've been a huge Rocky enthusiast for as long as I can remember, going all the way back to very early childhood. I have been looking forward to this film since the moment I walked out of the theaters of Creed in 2015. And now, the 8th entry in the Rocky franchise and the 2nd entry in the sort of spin-offs Creed series has finally arrived, so I'll be taking a look at what this multi-layered sequel has to offer. And as for spoilers, I don't think I'll be telling you anything that the trailer didn't tell you already. Unfortunately, Ryan Coogler, the fantastic director from 2015's Creed, has gone off to do big and better things like Black Panther, leaving the sequel to the unproven hands of Stephen Caple Jr., a director with few credits to his name. This made me nervous until the film began. The opening minutes of this sequel starts more than promising, with great atmosphere, good cinematography, and it had a unique mood to it. There was a sense of grit and realism to it, and every character reveal had weight as we reunited with so many old characters we've come to love. However, while I would just love to keep bubbling about how promising Creed 2 starts things off, the movie begins to lag badly even before the first act is over, and once the movie starts to slow down, the momentum is lost and never found again. Yes, to my dismay, Creed 2 dragged in its pace and ran out of new and interesting ideas very quickly. There was no one scene in the film that was, specifically bad or damning to the narrative, but rather the continual collection of mediocre and disappointing and trite moments that slowly drained the energy out of the experience. Halfway through the movie, a lot of people in my theater began, low-key checking their phones as the movie failed to hold our attention fully. It did not demand our attention because it did nothing interesting. Yet, in the tradition of the series, Creed 2 has an abundance of dialogue instead of fights and thrills. Though this is not necessarily a bad thing, it's important, I think, to remember that the Rocky movies are actually fairly dialogue-driven and are often quite quiet and contemplative, focusing on the spirit and love of competition and the lives of the men who fight. In this way, Creed 2 is never wrong in pursuing a continuation of characters and arcs we've seen before, nor is it wrong to place emphasis on who and what Adonis is fighting for. Yet, despite these excellent intentions, the movie slogs through scene after scene and line after line of unimaginative dialogue and groan-worthy cliches. The movie also contains quite a bit of music, though in this case, it's a bad sign. Abysmal, bottom-of-the-barrel TV shows like Keeping Up with the Kardashians will often play music in the background as characters are talking to create the illusion of momentum and structure, keeping a sense of flow and pace that covers up the fact that what the characters are actually talking about lacks any intellectual substance. Creed 2 does this several times, covering up its own blemishes with this kind of trickery. In the original Rocky, music was rarely used. The moments spoke for themselves. Sad piano music plays here and there, like when Rocky apologizes to Mickey and asks him to be his manager, and heroic music, of course, plays during the montage and at the end of the film. It never manipulates the audience, but punctuates and accentuates larger moments, as great movie soundtracks do. The tactics in Creed 2 are comparatively amateur. Now, you might think at this point that I hated the movie, but that wasn't the case. In truth, my ranting comes from just disappointment. The bar set by its predecessor was simply far too high. The first Creed used an old story, but injected fresh life and style into it, bringing back old themes and old characters in new ways. It created new people that you cared about in this old movie world, and the directing was incredible. Creed 2 is a downgrade compared to the original, but it never sinks too low, rather floundering in the mediocre. It's hard to pinpoint precisely where this occurs most, which is why I'm being vague. All that said, I don't disrecommend Creed 2. Its story decisions are often placed on the right values, and the acting is superb, and the whole experience tries very hard to leave you with the same great feelings of triumph that so many other Rocky movies succeed at. But it never quite manages to catch that lightning in the bottle or the chicken in the backyard. Where Coogler's Creed paid homage to 1976's Rocky, but added its own unique style and substance for a whole new generation, Capel's Creed 2 just revels in the established, offering no meaningful variety or personal input. All that said, it's time to talk about the villains of the film. The return of Ivan Drago. Rocky IV. Ivan Drago is a certain kind of antagonist. While he is not developed or interesting, the movie does a spectacular job in creating palpable tension, threat, and urgency. No, he was never a good character, and Rocky IV in general makes 1,000 mistakes as a film, but it presented its over-the-top cheeseball 80s supervillain with conviction and confidence, and remains incredibly memorable, for better or worse. I can't tell you how many times I've asked people over the years what they think of the Rocky series, and all they said was, "Oh yeah, I like that one with the Russian." Well, that one with the Russian, it may have been ridiculous, but you remembered it. Creed 2 had the opportunity to correct the wrongs of the past and enhance the established, but it merely attempts to do so, giving only scarce glimpses into Ivan and Vitor's lives, but never enough to make the audience really bond with them. Ivan's son shares many parallels with Adonis, and the film would have benefited greatly from treating its villain as a fully fledged character rather than a prop for Adonis to overcome. If the audience was bonded with the Dragos properly, it would have created a healthy sense of dissonance for the audience as they were rooting for Adonis, but knowing in the back of their mind that Vitor Drago was also fighting for the same things Adonis is. The surface of this interesting idea is merely scratched, but never fulfilled. Instead, they tried to have their big dumb cheeseball villain cake and their sympathetic villain cake and eat it too, and failed both in the process. Instead of getting to know our villain, we had the shift through Adonis's and Bianca's bland, cliched problems. The only story highlights given to Donnie and Bianca's relationship after the initial excitement of marriage is their potential issues with their child's health. This drama is actually one of the highlights of the film, and it allowed Michael B. Jordan to really flex his impressive acting chops, but Tessa Thompson felt like she was left high and dry for bigger emotional moments, and was completely overshadowed by Adonis. The first Creed movie treated Donnie and Bianca more equally, similar to how the first Rocky movie gave both of its attention to Rocky and Adrian almost equally. However, at least they didn't give her a stupid coma scene like Adrian and Rocky 2. If Ivan and Vitor were given more scenes, there could have been more characters to care about, which would have ultimately helped set Creed 2 apart from its peers and its predecessors, and created a richer experience overall. Instead, we just got a whole lot of mediocre. For these reasons, I give this movie a 7.0 out of 10, sticking to my guns that it's not that great, but it's also not that bad either, rather to the tune of disappointingly average. It manages to tap into some meaningful generational dynamics, and it has some good fight editing, and on paper, many of the story decisions were pointed in the right direction. However, it ultimately fails to bring enough thrills, and spends way too much time on trite and sluggish dialogue, and not quite enough time on truly meaningful moments. That's it for the review. Let me know in the comments if you agree that Creed 2 could have been a lot better, or if you think I'm being way too hard on it. Thanks for being a nerd with me, and I'll see you next time. Oh, Rocky! They just carbon copied his story arc from Rocky 4, 6, and Creed. Oh, and he debated calling his son All Movie, but never did.